This episode's brought to you by Affordable Drill Towers. Founded in 2016 by our good friend Steve Sanguidoce, a retired Houston, Texas firefighter, the Affordable Drill Tower was designed and built with functionality and versatility in mind for any training ground. As a standalone training tower or an add-on to an existing burn building or Connex setup, the Affordable Drill Tower packs a massive punch at an affordable price tag. With over 50 towers across the country, from Massachusetts to California, Montana to Texas, professionally engineered, NFPA and ISO compliant, the Affordable Drill Towers brings the versatility to your training ground. From Main Street USA, the small town fire company in their back parking lot, to the training grounds of the largest metropolitan fire academy, the Affordable Drill Tower fits the bill for price and functionality. Check them out at affordabledrilltowers.com. And two things I like to talk about also when talking about our friends over at Affordable Drill Towers. One, their customized training program. They have the ability to bring some of the best talent from across the country to your home turf after the install of the Affordable Drill Tower. Designing a customized training program for you and your department, Steve will facilitate some of the biggest and brightest names of the American Fire Service to come in and work with you and your department. And secondly, and I think most important, is Steve's belief in need over greed. The Affordable Drill Tower company gives back to not-for-profits that support organizations in the American Fire Service. Organizations such as the Joey D Foundation, which is near and dear to Steve Sanguidoce's heart, as well as many other not-for-profits that he takes a part of. He takes great pride in providing funding for organizations that push this job forward. So check them out, Steve and Dennis over at Affordable Drill Towers. Send them an email at info@affordabledrilltowers.com. Check them out on social media, and their YouTube page is kicking butt with great information, training nuggets, and information about their towers. So check them out, Affordable Drill Towers, and let them know Jeremy over at National Fire Radio sent you. This episode's brought to you by Ridgeway Leatherworks. Ridgeway Leatherworks is a firefighter-owned and operated business, as well as a family-run business, and that's what I love about it. Rob and his family are passionate about their customer service and the quality product and craftsmanship they put out for the emergency services. Rob's been on the show. We've been to his business. We've seen them in action. I've even tried to hand paint radio straps. I promise you, it is not as easy as what the final outcome looks like. The product is so good and so clean and crisp, and yet, man, it takes that steady hand. Rob's become a near and dear friend of our podcast, and you hear that over and over when we talk about our sponsors, that they're friends, supporters, and that's what this networking community is all about, is supporting one another. Ridgeway Leatherworks, Rob Meyer, crushing it. Quality and craftsmanship is number one. Customer service is right there with it. From custom radio straps, universal radio holsters, chin straps, flashlight holders, anti-sway straps, and locker tags made out of leather, there's plenty of opportunity along the way when you deal with Ridgeway Leatherworks. So check them out at ridgewayleatherworks.com. Find them on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And tell Rob you heard about him on the National Fire Radio platform, and give him a little plug and tell him keep up the good work. We need to support our firefighter-owned businesses, and especially family-run businesses, where his two daughters and his wife help out day in and day out along with his other employees. So again, Ridgeway Leatherworks, check them out at ridgewayleatherworks.com and find them on all your social media channels. Hey everyone, Jeremy, National Fire Radio. Welcome back to the podcast. Today is going to be a lot of fun. Pat Nichols, out of Boston, Massachusetts, a retired district chief, 37 years in the department, or almost 37 years. You're sitting there in that beautiful basement of yours with that gorgeous engine front behind you, or truck front, we should say, truck front, and then all the memorabilia there. But 37 years in Boston, there's a lot of memories and a lot of experiences to be had, Chief. Thanks for joining me today. Appreciate you being on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So let's hop right into it, man. Dirty 30, right in the background there. Old American LaFrance. Give me the background, because a lot of people are going to be curious what that's doing in your basement.
Well, it's you run into people as you go along through your career, and you never know who you're gonna, how it's gonna you affect somebody or something you say or anything like that. This was a conversation I had when I was a volunteer fireman with one of the members of the department I was with, along with another volunteer fireman. It was a combination department, so the other guy was a full-time career already. The other guy I was with ended up to be my brother-in-law eventually, a full-time fireman down there. 20 years later, the chief and my brother-in-law remember this conversation we have and say, "Hey, we're scrapping a 1969 American LaFrance, although it's an engine. Are you interested in it?" And I said, "Absolutely. I'll be down in a couple of weeks." He says, "No, it's in the scrapyard. It'll be pieces on Monday.
Yeah.
You need to come and get it this weekend." I'm like, all right, I guess. And it's just like when you go to move. "Hey, anybody want to go to Connecticut and help me move?" No, I got
Yep. Well,
anyway,
you got my number now. Give me a call. I would definitely come up and help you move that. I mean, that's it's cool.
I was surprised how big it was and how heavy it was. But anyway, long story short, Boston had a 1969 American LaFrance tractor trailer. As it turned out, it was disbanded, unfortunately, in 1981, 1982, when we lost quite a few companies in Boston. And so when I had an opportunity to paint this and bring it back, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with it. It was stuff I saw. It was 20 years in the making. Same story with a guy that does body work, and said, I just want to have a beer on it. Let me do it. And I'm like, okay, here it is. And Bob Stella is a very talented, does a lot of helmet fronts.
Oh yeah, he's been on my show. He was on my show. Okay, absolutely.
Well. Yeah, so that's Bobby's gold leaf work. He was gracious enough to come down here, and the top is Dorchester District Court jury bench. We were driving through Dorchester on the way back from training. Our Moon Island is our training academy, and it's literally an island. So we have to drive a pretty good distance to get to it, out of the city and then back in the city real quickly. But nonetheless, we drive by and we see jury benches in the dumpster. And I'm like, turn around. And so the superintendent comes out and says, "What do you firemen want? What do we do wrong?" And I said, no. So again, tell him the story. He says, "Hey, give him a hand, get that out of the dumpster." So we brought it back to the firehouse, and you can imagine on a ladder truck where that might have been stored.
Of course,
18 or 20 feet of.
Yeah, right.
And
that's awesome.
Had to be put someplace, but we got it back, and so there's the end result of it, and it was a labor of love. It was no other than the repainting. Everything else was elbow grease. 20
years in the making. You had plenty of time to figure out what you wanted and where it was going. No.
Oh, I actually built in a house, similar to the basement we have here, but it's a different house. But I built the corner where I was going to put this, knowing what I wanted, how big it was going to be.
One day.
Yeah, one day, someday. Yeah. And then there it was,
You know what? Interesting. Go ahead.
Well, we just moved here last year, and so it was interesting to move. I had to move that separately.
I believe it.
This is new construction, and literally the house is built around this. I had to take all the door frames out to make the corners in the back over here through the garage. And this is level, so it was easy to get in, but we had without taking the truck all apart, I ended up having to just, take the door frames off.
I can only imagine. I've had conversations, not like that, but probably pretty similar with my wife, where you're looking at your house going like, well, we have to save this area for this. And she just looks at you and shakes her head, right? Like, okay, that's the priority, right? That's the priority. Yeah. Well, it is, right? Makes you happy. If you think about it, though, I mean, looking at the walls, and then you pan the camera around, too. You have a ton of photos and things that are just on the wall, memorabilia of your career. I mean, just the memories and friendships and stories that you've made over time, to be able to have all that on display makes for an incredible place to remember your career and the friendships and brotherhood that you've made along the way.
Yes, and this is one of my, I love this room. We have a lot of memories down here with people coming and visiting and whatnot, watching games and overflow, if you will. This is where the adults come.
Yeah, I love that. And but what I think is, it's like my patio. I have an outdoor patio that's kind of like screened in, and that's the TV on the wall out there, furniture out, the outdoor wicker furniture out there to sit and have a cigar, have a drink, whatever it is. Yep. But man, a lot of business gets done there. Like a lot of good conversations, great ideas, the camaraderie, the brotherhood, invite them over after, after the firehouse or something like that. And so on. I mean, same thing at yours. I mean, I'm sure there's been a lot of decisions made around that bar.
Well, not many decisions, but we have, you know, if you don't help people or talk to people and you get through trouble, and it doesn't even have to be fire service stuff. It could be life that's maybe affecting the fire service or just affecting them personally. So, yeah, we have a lot of, you can't see it, but there's a big couch here. So, we, kind of go, the mental health couch over here,
therapy sessions, man.
Yeah, bar over here. So, yeah, we've it's good. Although I don't live, we have kind of the fire service tends to, well, at least as far as the city of Boston, it's so expensive to live in Boston, immediate vicinity of Boston. Everybody's starting to move away. The fire service is becoming harder to get people together because it was a neighborhood thing, volunteer service is obviously you're in a neighborhood, but a paid service, people are moving out and away, and we've lost a lot of that. Hey, let's go for a drink. And part of that's our problem too, but let's go for a drink or let's go have something after the firehouse, when we leave. 24s, 48s, that's changed that culture, that let's have a beer kind of thing. Certainly, when we were doing 10s and 14s and we would go out in the evening or right after work at 3:00, I'm sure that didn't go well for every family. We'll put it that way.
But it was probably easier to pull off on a 10 or 10s or 14s because on a 24, you're there for a day. You got to get home. You got, you
got to get home.
Yeah.
And, we start in the morning. So
that's right.
You can start in the morning, but starting in the morning is a long day, so.
Yes. Yeah. But I mean, you bring up a very good point, right? Because I think I understand of what I know of the Boston Fire Department. It is very neighborhood oriented, right? A lot of city departments are, right? That the stations are the focal point of that specific neighborhood. But a lot of it is guys walking to work, taking mass transit to work, riding their bicycles to work when it's a neighborhood firehouse, and the guys come from those neighborhoods. But you're making a very good point. As the cities get more and more difficult to navigate and to live within, guys are pushing out, which takes their time away from the firehouse, takes their time away from the neighborhood.
Yeah. And then that esprit de corps that is so important in the fire service is, I wouldn't say it's gone, but it's harder to keep it going. And so many people have, we're young, Boston, 1,000, we put on 1,000 people in 10 years. Out of 1,600 people, that's a lot of experience that not only has gone, but a lot of new experience with new families.
Sure.
And that's a different priority, of course. You've got little kids at home, it's not, the firehouse becomes less and less of a social thing to hang out and more just a job. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But we need to make it up at other ends of it, social events that we not make the new kids go, but make them understand that it's so important to go to funerals and wakes and firehouse functions and those let's hand out candy to the kids on Halloween,
sure.
That kind of thing. And all new guys, you should be here, part of that's the senior guys. I think, we're human race, right? We're quick to blame others, right? I've said, especially now that I'm one of them, and I mean that gray hair, that those guys at the kitchen table say the same thing that I was saying last year about these new kids, and I don't think I ever said, those kids are ruining the job and things like that. But I mean, we make jokes about like, oh my God, look at this.
Yeah.
Is it our fault or is it our responsibility? I should say, better word, our responsibility to make sure those new guys, those new people, guys and girls, that they know what's expected of them. I think.
Yeah, go ahead. Go.
Well, no, I was just going to say, we come into the firehouse and you sit down and we don't know anything. Even if you think you know something, you know what I mean? You don't know, you could be, and actually that was, we all learn from our own mistakes. And I think I knew a little bit about the job, probably a little bit too much, and maybe some of my decisions were made based on my previous experiences with other jobs and things like that, fire departments that I've seen, Buff, Sparking, things like that.
Sure.
And that's not, maybe in retrospect, that's, it's not always based on spark decisions, sparky decisions. It's got to be based on, sound managerial decisions, fireground things like that. But more importantly, the stuff that we do in the firehouse. I mean, I always say the fireground's easy. That kind of falls into place as far as leading goes. It's the firehouse stuff that you gotta put on. And I think, we lose a little bit of that because it's all got to be done at the firehouse. Where before we can have a beer over here, or a beer on the couch, or go to a local place and talk about, our family and our friends. And that doesn't happen as much in the firehouse because we're dealing with now. We have training. We have to, we have that social part that we're trying to figure out too. But we all got the responsibilities of in the firehouse and the volunteer service, albeit a while ago when I was involved in it, is a very social thing, of course. I mean, it usually becomes, correct me if I'm wrong, a social gathering area, like the second floors, things like that. The upstairs meeting rooms
But even that's suffering, as the numbers dwindle in the volunteer service. We don't have people staying as long after calls anymore. We don't have the tutoring, the mentorship that we once had. Even myself, when I run over for a call, we're going out the door 700,000 times a year, running fire rounds. It's like if you're not a bunk-in program or you don't have the opportunity to stay, there to dedicate a definite time to your service, but it's a home response. Like you're always running out because you might be running to the firehouse 5 times a day for nonsense runs. And so your time becomes limited. And so you don't stay as long. You don't have that banter or that extra half a second to talk to that new kid or young kid. And that is detrimental to the volunteer service. And it also happens in the career service too. On your side, it certainly happens. Guys are responsible to get home and take care of childcare because their wives work, so they have to get home from the firehouse. They can't hang out. They can't find a way to finagle a couple more hours of socializing because they have obligations and important things that they have to do outside of the firehouse. Something you brought up that piqued my interest there real quick was I love the term spark, which is up in the New England area. It's being a buff, right? Fire buff and, fire photographer, things like that, and so on. And it's especially in the Boston area, years and years ago when Boston was burning and so on. I mean, there was, that whole New England area around Boston was burning at some points. And so there was, it was a very popular thing to do was to be a spark. You brought up and made a really interesting comment to me, and I think it's something that we have to talk about. It's finding that fine balance between being broken down and understanding and knowing your department and getting rid of the things that you've known prior, right? But finding an even balance where that can influence your decision-making, but it has to be done through the eyes of, say, the Boston Fire Department. Yes. Sometimes that's a tough thing to navigate for people.
I have found... especially teaching, which, in the state academy, it's just more of a structured program that we're delivering. I work primarily for the recruit program. So it's a very structured program daily, but I also have the PL Vulcan thing that we go on on the road with. And this is where I'm teaching with. So in the state academy, of course, it's primarily, in fact, I would say all Massachusetts firemen, although there are a Connecticut guy here and there, and this scattered, but for the most part, there in the campus that I work at, it's all Massachusetts firemen. So we're all dealing with the same kind of things. Pretty much the kitchen table, we call it the ready room at the academy, is other than drafting out of a lake or something like that somebody might bring up some of the other departments. We can engage in every conversation.
Sure.
Drafting, right? Okay. So, and I appreciate what they can do. Let me tell you, they get water out of a rock.
That's very true.
I just, when you got hydrants every 400 to 600 feet, you just become a spoiled brat, as far as that goes.
Makes sense. What do you need? Yep. I got it right here.
Yeah. But when I morphed there. When we go out on the road, I'm teaching with guys from New York City, from California,
Right.
Colorado, Kentucky areas, in Florida sometimes. I mean, now we kind of have to make things go in the right way. And it's funny because we're all like-minded, and some of my people that we work with, from New York City, an officer and 5 guys, officer 6 people. I mean, some departments that might be your whole first alarm
Correct.
assignment, let alone one engine or
Yep.
truck.
Yep.
So it is, they have to come down to, speak the level, if you will. Same with bringing your outside experiences in, in my case, into a new, a different venue, if you will. And that took me a little bit of, maneuvering, not long, but especially being a boss. As a fireman, it was kind of, you do as you're told, basically.
Sure.
But then becoming an officer, and that was after 5-6 years or so. I became a lieutenant, and I quickly figured out how to,
Sure.
it's the Boston way, not, don't. And that's the way it's going to be. And I can affect change, but it's not something that's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, right? Really interesting. Getting to travel like you do, it certainly opens up your horizon to see what other people do, right? But for you on the job, right? 37 years, right? You came into the Boston Fire Department with a little bit of knowledge and experience behind you. And so it's a tough thing to navigate for some, because you really want to go in with an open mind and be brandy new. I mean, maybe some of the best people we have are people that have never been exposed to the fire service until the day they walk into the fire academy, right? Because they don't bring any preconceived ideas or notions with them to cloud their judgment or decision making. And and so that's a really interesting balance, because what it does is it requires you to understand the game, if you will, like who you are and how it works, and finding and bridging that, that difference between what you learned and what the conditions of which you already know versus what you need to be taught, and then making sure that you represent the department that you ride for. I think that's very important. You mentioned, go ahead.
I was just going to say the patch on your side of your arm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you mentioned PL Vulcan. We should say you are co-owner and one of the operators of PL Vulcan. You guys travel all over the country, all over the world, basically teaching. You guys, I would consider, are one of the OG training companies that have been around for quite some time. Please talk about it.
Well, it started. Pete Lund was the originator. He was a fireman in Rescue 2.
Right.
And of course, 9/11. Excuse me. I just started working for them. I think I only did one class really that summer before 9/11, and then of course 9/11 everything paused. For the most part, especially anybody did anything to do with New York City as far as on the job, they were all committed to the pile. Which everybody understood that. Sure. Anyway, long story short, he ends up retiring out of the city after 9/11 settled down. I think it was 2002. He might have retired, maybe 2003. And anyway, he passed away on Long Island at his fire department, at a fire in his fire department on Long Island.
Yes.
And unfortunately, so with that, Mark Gregory, myself, and Jim Sanders, who's a retired fireman from Rescue 2, asked the widow the following year or so, is like, we want to resurrect this. I mean, this is Pete's life. This is his company. So that's where the PL comes from. Right. And he was the Vulcan. That was his name.
He was known as the Vulcan. Yeah.
Yep. So here we are. And, 20 years later, we're doing, we got 16, 18 people. And we are, I've gone to Okinawa. This spring, we went to Alaska. We've been to Canada. So it's kind of cool. We got a couple things in the works overseas, but I don't know. Things like that take time.
Yeah, of course. So you develop relationships too. I mean, it takes time.
So we might be in Europe, and the war, of course, is kind of in both. Ukraine and Israel are kind of holding things up right now. We'll see what happens. So
that's fun. But let me ask you, the whole mission behind PL Vulcan though is to push the job forward, right? It's to take experience and knowledge from your own jobs and careers and pay it forward through teaching across the world, right? So has training always been super important to you from your early days up through your career, or is that something you latched onto later on, understanding the importance of training? Because sometimes it takes a little while to really understand and focus that training is a big part of it, especially, you know, you 1986, hired in 86. Boston was seeing some fire then, I'm sure. You guys are probably going to work regularly, so training wasn't what it is today for sure back then. So was that always something for you, training?
Yes, actually, as in the volunteer deck in Naugatuck, it was a combination department. I ended up on the volunteer side being one of their assistant coordinators, if you will, on training. And although being a new 18, 19-year-old guy, I would interested enough in the job to be able to get people to come and do some training for us. Limited budget, it was what it was, but it really was a passion that I had right from the beginning. Like you said, early 80s, right up to mid 90s, to late 90s even, we were pretty busy, and it was more OJT. There was less focused department training. It would be more company-wide, and they were expecting the company officers to do the training, which worked great for me because I had a bunch of motivated Marine, I felt like I was with the Marines.
Yeah.
Although I wasn't a Marine, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
These guys they would send anywhere, and it was I got very comfortable at Atlanta 26 because we were busy going to work, but we were busy in runs, so you didn't mind the runs because we had fires involved. And so it was we had a lot of fun. I had the same 4 guys pretty much for 10 years. Unusual, and especially unusual in a busy firehouse, because gets tiring after a while.
Sure.
With seniority, it's all seniority transfers for us, and as you gain seniority, you can go to fire companies, if you will, that are doing less running, same amount of fires.
Yeah.
Kind of like,
I get it.
But I really enjoyed my time on Huntington Avenue, and that was an opportunity for me to, I try to pick something small, and I call them 10-minute drills, and that wasn't something I knew that I was doing then, but now I really liked 10-minute drills, especially as a chief officer, because it didn't put a lot of guys on the spot that they thought they'd have to come up with a lesson plan and have the all morning. It's like, you don't need that. You hand somebody a Halligan and tell me what you know about the Halligan, 3 things. And then you hand it to the next guy. Tell me what you could do with that. And then you go to the next guy, and eventually somebody comes back and says, hey, I didn't know that.
Right.
And now your 10-minute drill is a half an hour. And it's not like, oh my God, Nichols is back again. Oh my God, he's a dentist.
Yeah.
I don't want to work with Nichols because he's a dentist. You know what I mean? So, and a dentist, what I mean by is that, always drilling.
Yeah.
So, take a little snippets, a little bit at a time. I ended up, I was a captain at Ladder 25, where we lost the 2 members at the restaurant, the Chinese, well, it's a Thai restaurant, but the Japanese, Chinese restaurant. And one of the members we lost, Warren Payne, was on my group. I wasn't working that day, and ended up getting new radios that I still say we could probably talk to Skylight, Space Lab, and but typical to a lot of fire departments, I came in the next morning with new radios.
Yeah.
We had no training on it. I mean, hey, just turn it on. Well, but how do I was a little savvy with radios. I was, a spark. So I kind of can maneuver my way around all these banks. I mean, there was like 900 radio channels. I mean, you gotta give us something, you know what I mean? And even the emergency button, they probably told the group before, but that never passed.
Sure. It didn't come down the line. Yeah.
And so, we tested in the emergency button, all well and good. And one of the things that Warren happened on his radio, I don't know if he actually pushed the emergency button, or if it failed because he was involved in the fire. He was caught in a flashover.
Yeah.
And if you could see his radio cord and the radio mic, it potentially could have shorted out and sent the signal. But you like to think that you do a little things and, you throw a little information out and then somebody can pull it out of a tool chest in something.
Yeah.
It's that.
Yeah. Well, I think I love the idea of the 10-minute drill, right? Because you're right. It's never 10 minutes. And there's no pressure or formalcy to it that makes people want to shy away from it. And in fact, I think some of the best training we do is that informal stuff that comes up on a run or when you got a few minutes in the street standing by for the gas company or something and, you start talking, right? Or you grab a bar and you start talking about it, or you grab a hook off the rear or you talk about, look at this building, how would we stretch on this? Those turn out to be some of the best training minutes we have.
Mm-hmm. Take opportunity. I even say go into, at medicals, you got to take care of Mrs. Jones on the floor. But even in a medical, you could look around briefly and say, hey, what would we do?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know this was a sunken living room with a pool in the middle of it. That would be nice.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. I mean, you can learn a lot. Building this construction. I tell new guys if I ever do the, if I do lectures, anything to do with the building construction part of it, that, look around it's not on fire now, but what would it be like if it was? How would you act? What would be some of the things you would look at? Sunken living rooms. I actually have one upstairs that would give somebody, if you weren't paying attention, somebody a howdy doody.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Step down to my living room.
Yep.
And then it's important. But we can learn every time once you put that uniform on for a full-time job, or even just get on the rig for a call as a volunteer or a call fireman, you could learn something.
100%.
It may be a quick run. You could look, where's the standpipes? Where's the hydrant? Hey, that house is 600 feet off the street. What are we going to do here? A curvy driveway. I can't get the truck in there, or whatever it might be. And it's that, the repetition that we keep doing, that recognition, prime decision making that occurs. Like, I don't remember the building, but I remember this happening.
Right.
And so the longer you have, and that's kind of what they're saying with that, is that's experience.
Well, and I love that, right? Because that's where experience does matter, right? When somebody takes a 20, when they do a 10-minute drill and they can relate it to something that happened in the department's past, where they said, oh, that fire we had over on 123 Mockingbird Lane, right? Like, that's where this could have came in handy, guys. Like this, I saw this firsthand. I can tell you that this works, or I can tell you this doesn't work. That's where experience matters, especially on the training side, because it validates the information that's being put out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
I agree.
Absolutely. And the thing about experience, you could be the first day in the firehouse, never have even looked at a fire truck, but can bring something to the table. Roofers, building construction, electric. Everybody can bring something to the table. We should tap onto that. Now, some of the, the educational system in the United States right now is not really teaching functional stuff as much as, I had
a lot of theory, Chief. A lot of theory out there.
Yeah.
Right. This episode's brought to you by Taylor's Tins. Taylor and his crew at Taylor's Tins have been manufacturing aluminum helmet fronts since 2017. With over 200,000 tins in the market, they are a leader in the helmet front space. Custom design, one-offs to department orders, they can turn them around within 24 to 48 hours. Customer service is what they pride themselves on, and they provide nothing but top-shelf product and service to their customers. Check them out at taylorstins.com and check out their full line of product offering. They've always been a very strong supporter since day one with the National Fire Radio podcast and platform, and Taylor and his crew have become dear friends of ours, and we appreciate the support. And at checkout, for a little extra bonus, use coupon code NFR Sent Me. That's NFR Sent Me for a discount on your order. Exclusions do apply. Anyway, check out taylorstins.com for the latest and greatest offerings from Taylor and his crew. And in the words of Taylor, stop burning up leather. This episode's brought to you by the Affordable Standpipe Prop. Let's break it down real quick. Steve and the crew at Affordable Drill Towers is doing it again. They've created this fully custom and fabricated standpipe prop to support the fire service. I'm telling you right now, this is a game-changing piece of training equipment. And I want to hop into it real quick. It is designed with a 4-inch manifold of high-strength galvanized Schedule 10 pipe. The cart and manifold are powder-coated red for a durable finish, meaning it's not just a talking piece. It's not something you tuck away on the shelf. This is a training prop that can be wheeled into the classroom and then brought out onto the training ground. And so let's talk about that. In the classroom, there's nothing better than having a hands-on prop in front of the students, in front of the fire companies that are there to learn about standpipe and FDC connections. Having that prop in the classroom allows for a great instructional lecture. And then from there, take the standpipe theory and translate it to the training grounds. You could wheel the cart out that's on casters, you wheel it out into the parking lot, and that same training prop that you just used hands-on in the classroom can now be used hands-on on the training ground by pumping into it and flowing out of it. It offers such versatility in its approach. It has a 2.5-inch Siamese connection, 7 2.5-inch outlets, 6 of which are standpipe valves, has a water motor gong, sprinkler head with a control valve, and a system pressure gauge. You can also upgrade and put 3 of the most common field-adjustable PRVs. I'm telling you right now, this is a game-changing training prop that needs to be in every fire company or training department across the country. Reach out to Steve and the crew, info@affordabledrilltowers.com. Ask for a demo, ask for information, or check them out on social media and YouTube. There's plenty of content out there that shows you exactly what the affordable standpipe prop can do for you.
You know, we have to recognize that, and we talked about that. Your class the other day was, you know, very much on that subject. So obviously speaking to the choir, but they everybody can bring something to the table, you know, and if you can funnel that to, you know, a positive way as a leader, because we don't really manage people, we lead people. We manage things, we manage the day, we manage, you know, what's happening, but we should be leading people, and if we make them understand and want to be there, like it may have nothing to do with me, maybe, but those 4 guys that stayed with me for 10 years, it must have been something.
Yeah, of course.
Maybe it was the other guys and I was just there, I don't know, but it was, you know, 10 guys, you know, 10 years is, you know, something to be said about the same 4 guys
in a very busy house
and a busy house. And those are probably some of my fondest memories.
What company was that? Was that Ladder 26, Chief?
Ladder 26.
Okay. Yeah, and were you a fireman there and also a boss, or just a fireman?
No, I was only a boss there. I
Okay.
started as a fireman on Engine 22 in the South End, and then became a boss. Brief stint in Brighton, Ladder 14, and then came to Huntington Avenue it was actually closer to 11 years.
Okay.
Got promoted. No, I'm sorry. I went to Rescue 2 for about a year. At the time, this is my career, but at the time they were cutting back companies and we lost a couple districts. And so I was on the captain's list. It didn't look like I was going to get promoted. So I kind of wanted to go to Rescue 2.
Yeah.
They're half the city. I would have retired out of Rescue 2 if I didn't get promoted.
Okay.
In fact, I would have. That was my dream house to be
at. Good spot. Yeah.
I would have, and it would have been great. I would have been very happy there, and you know, things happen for a reason, and that's fine. I get promoted out of Rescue 2, and then I come back to Huntington Avenue with Ladder 26 for about a year and a half.
Nice.
And then at the time, Tower Ladder 10 was going to all the confirmed fires in Division 2, which so essentially was Rescue 2 a little bit behind them leaving. They go on the initial call, I go on smoke.
Yep.
You know, so but that was as close to a rescue captain as I was going to get, and Tower 10 is a technical rescue truck along with Rescue 2, so it was essentially the same thing. And I had a good run there. I was there for 7 years, and then you know the chief, you know, you got to go to the next step, you know.
Of course. Well, we need that. I talk about that a lot lately too, is talking with guys like you and understanding that we need firemen in decision-making positions. So many guys, you know, they're firemen or they're company bosses, but they don't want to go they don't want to go any higher because it's not exciting for them anymore. They want to stay on the line. They want to stay, you know, in the trenches, if you will. And I think that we need the good people up top because, you know, everybody complains about the administration. Everybody complains about the command staff, how these guys have promoted so fast. They have no experience. They're talking, you know, their lack of experience shows in decision-making, whether on the fire ground or in policy and so on. And so when all that becomes part of the recipe, we got to get our own people in there. We got to get people that represent the guys in the trenches and understand what it's like to go to fires. And we need them in those decision-making positions to have a seat at the table.
Exactly. And I think at some point during your career, at least I'm speaking for myself. At some point, you almost have to, I don't know, become an adult. Like,
that's a good way to put it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's like, all right, now I gotta, and it's funny, you know, those aha moments, those, you know, you take the job. It's like, oh, I probably could do this. Right. So my first day as a captain, I was a lieutenant on Tuesday, the week before. I'm in front of a fire building as the acting district chief because I got promoted captain on like Thursday or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Following tour, I don't think I did any tours. Like the following tour was in the chief's car and standing in front of a burning building at 5 after 8 in the morning.
There it is.
I'm like, okay, aha. I have to be the adult here.
Yeah, well, time to grow up real fast. Yeah.
So I reach down and I take a kink out of a line, and then I thought the pump operator was going to take my head off. What hose? And I've known him forever, but that was his way of like,
Yep.
And then I get in the chief's car and fully promoted.
Right.
And my very first day as actually wearing the white coat. And my thing, we don't really have there's really no SOP as far as acting goes. And we've done different things, helmet, you know, stickers and things like that. My helmet is my helmet. My captain's helmet was my captain's helmet. That's what's going to be. I'll wear the white coat, but unless I'm wearing the rank fully, I'm not wearing a white hat.
Right.
That's like, to me, that was always distinguished.
I get it.
Actual rank.
Sure.
So there I am, white coat, black hat. Everybody knows I'm acting, right? I'm standing in front of the building. Everybody's like, oh, he's just acting, you know? It's like, but you have to be the adult. Now I actually have the white hat because I'm now an actual. So let me back up. So I could be back on the line tomorrow. You know, I'm only in the car for a bit, and then I'm back on.
Right.
So I would be in and out. So you kind of like, and then you get that aha, and then now you're promoted. I'm never going back to ride a fire truck anymore. You know, at least in Boston.
Right.
And so we go to, it's a multiple, it's 3 or 4, and I got a couple buildings going like Boston usually does, the back porches, you know. And we go out there Sunday morning. I get there, and so we get to the top floor, and I'm like on the second alarm. So I got interior. I go in second alarm, get to the top floor, and this thing is rocking.
Yeah.
And everybody's trying to get up the front stairs, and I'm always my truck mind. Don't take the front stairs. Go around back. You know, get in another way. Everybody else is trying to get up the front, or whatever. You know.
Sure.
And so where I go up the front, I go up the back. Nobody's up there, and get to the back porch, and I hear a couple guys coming up, and you know they've been in the firefight. They've been there for a while. So they're just kind of like trying to get up, and I'm like, hey, I see that they're gassed. I said, give me your rake, you know, pipe bowl.
Yeah.
Boss rake, and let me pull this ceiling here. He just gets all whatever he can pull up, lifts up into me. He said, Chief, with all due respect, not a chance in hell you get my tool.
Love that. It's the right answer. You expected that from him. I mean, come on.
As much as I wanted to play.
That speaks volumes, right? It speaks volumes to the commitment of your companies, right? I love that, man. I saw that coming a mile away. That's fantastic. Yeah. Let me ask you, I'm sure it was a hard transition. I mean, you're a hands-on guy for a very long time in your career. And then when you do get to the Chiefs car, to that buggy, right? Big adjustment.
It took a while. It took, and you see pictures, and I, as a chief, you're still part of the team. I mean,
Sure.
dragon hose, maybe not, but when you're picking up stuff, and to me, I was never above like laying out a line or
Yes.
helping drain a line or
Right.
anything like that. That was never. Yeah, I get the beginning. I get the rake. I'm not supposed. I'm supposed to be more of a. I
Sure.
get that. All right. So that was me. Took the test. Got lucky. Got promoted. Here I am. Now I don't touch tools.
Yeah.
But picking up and things like that, I was always like, yeah, let me do this. It's not the fun stuff, but it's still, you're still not. I'm not. I was never above being picking up stuff.
Yeah.
But it took a while to get in that role for me. Anyway, I mean, a while. I mean, like 6 months. I was kicking, and I don't. When I say kicking kinks out of lines, of course, chiefs are going to do that. But I meant, when you start pushing lines in, or taking out a window, now you're not doing your job as a chief, as the boss. You know what I mean? And you have to step back. I had a chief in ladder 26 who, and I always carried a flathead axe. That was my thing, and I could tell you some of the reasons why I did. But carry a flathead axe, and he would bark at me because you shouldn't be carrying a tool as a boss. I said, I use the tool to get out of bad places. And here's my other tool, which is the thermal imaging, which he never had because he came out in the 70s. And here's my tools. And this tool, the thermal imaging, I'm watching my people. This tool, the flathead axe, let me do what I got to do.
Gets me out of trouble. Yeah.
Working supervisor, working
sure.
foreman, you know what I mean? But get me out of trouble too. And then we, as our open up team, or it's not a team, it's only one guy. So open up person, or the Halligan's person, the irons person, carries the Halligan, but carries a maul, an 8-pound maul.
Right.
So very rarely, if there's a hardened door that they're not able to set the tool, then I had the flathead axe to be able to hop in.
Sure.
We only had one. There's only 3 people going in. One guy's on the turntable. So sometimes there's only 2 if we were 1 and 3. I mean, you work with what you got,
Of course.
And that was my thing. It's like, I don't have enough people if I had 6 people that I was supervising, that requires more supervision.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you then, I mean, the transition from company boss to district chief, that's quite a transition. What about from firefighter to company boss? It's listening to your pedigree, the different companies you were in, all very busy companies, and so on. I'm assuming a lot of people think company officer is the best position that they've had in their career. I'm curious what your feelings are on that. And then also that transition from being a backstep firefighter to sitting in that front seat, a little bit of that transition for you too, Chief. What did that look like?
Well, go for the back step to the, it's funny because I started as on an engine.
Okay.
I was recruited to go to this particular engine, good friends with the captain and everything like that. And that was cool. And then I ended up going to a truck company because they were getting rid of the tillers in Boston. So it was one of the 2 last tillers in the cities. And I wanted to go spend a little time tillering.
Right.
And so that was cool. And I didn't do a lot of it, but did some of it, and that was cool. And then it got promoted. So I had some time on both an engine and then a truck, and then I had, only had a couple, 3, 4, 5 roofs. I mean, I didn't get that much time. So when I transitioned, but I did like the truck stuff. So when I transitioned and got promoted, I tried to keep myself on a ladder truck. Didn't always occur, but for the most part, I was permanently assigned to ladder trucks. Never went to an engine other than filling in here and there for whatever reasons. But so I felt very comfortable being on the ladder truck. In Boston, they're like scouts. So we're always doing the investigation.
Right.
We're always the ones that were in there, and first to find out where things were, whether it's just a smoke detector or a smoke condition, whatever it might have been. So I always found that more of a problem solving thing that was always intrigued me. Where is the smoke coming from? Where is this odor coming from?
And that was the responsibility of the ladder companies, right? The truck companies in Boston do the investigations, and then they'll put the line, and then the engine company will put the line in the street or do whatever they need to get to what you guys determined to be the issue.
Correct.
Got it.
Correct. Yep. So that was a very problem-solving thing for me, and I enjoyed that. It gave me an opportunity to learn about the systems, learn about the building, of course. We were in the hospital area. Ladder 26 is Longwood Medical area, first due. So we had a lot of stuff that we were involved that were you're not going to see very often.
Yeah.
So smoke control systems and some of the newer buildings, all things that are high-rise things, and they weren't necessarily high-rise, but because it was such a large complex, acted like a high-rise. So we get off the ladder truck and walk. Sometimes I tell the engine to go around the block because it's a whole nother block around.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that was, I think, the transition to the truck to the lieutenant was easier because I found that the being in the ladder on the ladder truck a very comfortable position for me, and I ended up finding, I guess, a comfort zone with that. So it was an easy transition for me. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Going to captain, the lieutenant was, you've got, your 4 people or 5 people. The people on your company, on your group. That's the people you're worried about.
Right.
The people when you become a captain, it's all 20 people you're worried about.
Yeah.
And then if you happen to be the house captain, you get all the responsibilities of all the building as well. And again, I liked taking on more responsibilities, especially as we got older, or I got older, and your career goes, it's like, yeah, give it to me, put it on me. And the challenges, I think, remembering where you come from, going from firefighter to a boss, whether it's lieutenant or captain, is the biggest thing you can have. The biggest thing that people forget is remembering where they came from, remembering how you were treated as a firefighter or a lieutenant by your subordinates, people that you were either in charge of or people who were in charge of you. If you're not humble enough to be able to understand that you're not the smartest guy in the room, then you're setting yourself up for a failure.
Oh, for sure. For sure. That's why I do this. I get to talk to guys like you, a hell of a lot smarter than I am. I like to learn, man. That's why I sit back and listen, because there's just so much out there to absorb. And if you're willing to open yourself up to it, it certainly will make an impact on your career. And for you, I love what you said, though, not forgetting where you come from. I think that's super important. And the higher you go, even more important it becomes.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And I remember, we all have tough bosses, at some point or another in our careers, and so, and I also had, by far more officers that I wish I could have become, you know what I mean? And you find the ones that you emulate or you look up to, and you try to be like them, but you're still got to be your own personality, and you still got to be your own thing. And if you forget where you're coming from, you're not humble, just because you're, all due respect to chief officers, I was one, so I guess I could say, just because you got gold on it doesn't mean you know everything. And
that's right.
People, and again, forget where you came from, if you were the clown in the back of the bar yesterday, and now all of a sudden nobody else could do that because you're the chief now,
right?
That's a difficult. Sometimes that's awkward, difficult to.
Oh, very much so. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think, though, too, and this is what I'm really curious then, is the segue is, don't forget where you came from. Your early days, 1986, coming out of the fire academy and going into that engine company. What was that like for you? I mean, was the Boston Fire Department being a spark, you obviously wanted to go to Boston, I would assume, right? That was the spot. And so, did you grow up in Boston? Is that where you're from?
No, I grew up in Connecticut,
Okay.
Naugatuck, Connecticut. I
Okay.
grew up in Waterbury, Connecticut, but Naugatuck, we were on the border. Naugatuck was the combination fire department that
Got it.
I was
Okay.
on. And I moved up to Boston it would have been 85 after I graduated I'm sorry, 1980 when I graduated high school.
Okay.
And I went to Northeastern and then basically stayed in Boston.
Got it.
But Northeastern has just quickly, they have a co-op program. So I did the co-op program with them and sat behind a desk doing a couple things and like, no.
Not for me.
Still being a volunteer fireman,
Yeah.
going home on Connecticut on weekends.
Yeah.
They let me do the weekend thing, while I was in school, and decided that I wanted to make a career out of it. I thought my career in the fire service was going to be volunteer, which is absolutely fine. And I thought I'd be whatever I would end up to be in the business world. And then I realized my passion, where my heart was. And like every little boy grows up to be a fireman.
I love it. Yeah, 100%.
And I wanted to be in a city. I wanted to be a busy place. I wanted, I signed up for New York City, and mid 80s, a lot of people were, it was a weird time to get hired. There was not a lot of hiring. Some departments were extended their lists by years, and because they weren't giving exams. And Boston was just right place, right time, right exam.
Just
happened to get lucky. We put on Boston in starting in 83. I think we put on 300 or 400 people in the first couple years.
Right.
End of 80s, beginning of 90s, and then all these 300 people are all leaving now. So there's been a lot of retirements, a lot of guys with 35, 37, 38 years that have been leaving the job, which is the brain trust. We're losing a lot of our experience. Like I said earlier, we probably put on 1,000 people in the last 10 years. I mean, that's 1,000 new people, and what are you
guys doing about that? And I mean that in an informal way. Like, is there recognizing how much experience is walking off this job, not walking off in a bad way, but obviously retiring and getting what's owed to them, right? And as it changes, I mean, the Boston Fire Department is a big little city, right? So it's like it's a major urban metropolitan city that offers anything and every opportunity you could possibly need for a fire department. It's going to present itself there, but it's still small on a scale of you guys are like, I would say you're a mid-size career department.
Well, 1,600 people. That's I would say, mid-size.
Yeah.
Higher end of the mid-size.
Yeah.
But and Boston's funny because it's a neighborhood. It's made of neighborhoods.
Yes.
People say that, I meet people all over. Oh, where you from? Boston. It's like, we're in Boston. And they'll say, oh, I don't know, Manchester, New Hampshire. It's like, well, you're not really, that's not Boston.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But if they would say something like Dorchester or Brighton, it's like, oh, well, you are them,
You make a very good point, because that happens all the time. It's like, I'm a fireman at Dorchester, and I'm like, oh, okay, Boston fireman though, right? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but they're neighborhood oriented. I mean, that is what they know, right?
Yeah.
And that, I think, is so important. We started this whole conversation a while back about a neighborhood fire department and how important that is, right? Where you get that buy-in from people that come from that first due area. They have just a little bit more of a buy-in because it's their zip code.
Yes, it's their zip code. Their family's there. My daughter-in-law is my son grew up out of the city, but has been living there for 10 years, 12 years now, I think. Got on the fire department,
Sure.
but is living there with his wife, who is a Dorchester girl, Walsh. And so you can imagine that how many Walshes came to the wedding.
Absolutely. Yep.
And they all walked. They got married in the back of their parents' house, and they all walked they walked from the neighborhood to the parents' house.
So cool.
And that is just so endearing to Boston. I mean, it is. It is just a very cool thing to do. And I'm not originally from Boston, but these people have the guys in the fire department have families, long lineages. We have brothers and cousins on the job. My daughter-in-law's cousin just got on our fire department. She was a police officer, I think she was in before, and then now she's going to be a Boston firefighter. They're very cool, but that's how the Boston Fire Department is made of a whole bunch of families that are lineages of legacies of members on the job,
Yeah, I do. And that matters, right? Because there's that protection of the job then. And that's where I'm curious. And that's to bring me back around to my original question is what are we doing to preserve the experience that's walking out the door? We need to funnel that through the next generation. And we need to find those ways to share those experiences and that knowledge that's been gained and that neighborhood information and to continue to get the buy-in from your people.
Yeah, we've actually come a long way with managing and mentoring our people, especially the company officers. They have the junior fire officer program, which it's been 2 weeks. It's sometimes a little longer, but it's basically 2 weeks for lieutenants and captains, newly promoted if you haven't done it. And it's not just the paperwork stuff. It's how to run, how to be a boss. And not so much. And this is the fire department, not just Boston Fire Department. Not so much. You think about when we go to drill school, right? We go to drill school 16 weeks, 20 weeks sometimes. You get out of drill school. You're lucky if you get a first line supervisor training, a week or two. Yeah. So we did 16 weeks. We go to 2 weeks. We get nothing usually as a chief officer.
Yep.
Unless you do your own training. Now, I believe they are developing a chief officer program for us. The problem is there's a lag, for us. So Mark Gregory just got promoted to battalion chief down in New York City. Mm-hmm. They sent him to school.
Yes.
For like a month before that. And then he couldn't get promoted unless he passed his school. Right. I'm pretty sure that's how that works. He got promoted like 35 battalion chiefs or 40 battalion chiefs. Right. We're promoting him one a month.
Right.
Or one every couple months. You know what I mean? So it's very difficult. There's going to be a lag if you wait to put a class, to do a class of 6 of when you actually get promoted to actually go to the class.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening with even the junior officers program that they have. I mean, you could be promoted for quite a while before you actually go there. It doesn't mean that you can't, but you might have bad habits or been doing something that you could have done better for 6 months prior to this class.
Yes.
So I think it's a fire service. We have to look into tapping some of our, senior people maybe, to run some of these and share some of this knowledge. And you asked me, where's my passion? My passion right now is I'd be going nuts if I didn't have the fire service training.
Yeah.
Part of my life. The fire service was, like most of us, such a big part of our lives. And for me, it was a big part, obviously. You can
yeah,
tell.
right. Yeah, exactly.
But it was a passion, and I always wanted to strive to do better, and I hopefully I have done better, and I can, my training, I can share what I've learned, what I screwed up. You learn just as much doing it right as you do it wrong.
This job's built on mistakes, right? We make mistakes every single day, whether it's an administrative mistake, an operational mistake. We make mistakes.
And we learn from it. And you should learn from that.
That's right.
I always say the more you screw up, the better you're going to get.
I believe in that. Right. It's you gotta crack some eggs, right? You gotta crack some eggs before you make the perfect omelet. And there's something to that, especially in the fire service. And you're not going to get it right every single time. And I think that's a big part of the conversation too for the young people coming on is that understanding, that you're going to make mistakes, but it's how you deal with that and how you move forward from them is what sets you apart and sets you up for a successful career.
Yes. And I think too is that there's so many people that it's instant gratification, right? I have a question. Pick up my phone.
Yep.
I need to know something.
Yep.
Pick up my phone.
Yep.
It's instant
Yep.
gratification. Some of these people are coming into the fire service and like, all right, I'm going to be a lieutenant. I'm studying already. Well, why don't you try graduating from the drill school first, and then you maybe go from there, or maybe take some other classes.
Yeah.
It's okay to study because you learn stuff studying, but life is fast. Soak it in as you go along.
You can't. Yeah, Chief, you bring up a very good point, right? Everything is immediate these days, and so we want immediate gratification. And if the goal is if you think the goal in firefighting is to just promote up and to make more money and to have a more prestigious title, you're mistaken.
That's right.
You're mistaken. And
100%.
This job, career or volunteer, it is based on experience. And the only way you get experience is through longevity. You can't, there's no other way to circumvent the system. That is it. Mm-hmm. You have almost 37 years in the Boston Fire Department, and you're still learning every single day after retirement, and even, training with the Massachusetts State Fire Academy and traveling around the country. You're still learning every single day. So if a chief at 37 years retired out of an urban city is still learning, then I'm telling you, you better all be learning. I'm still learning. I learn every single day when I get to do this podcast or when I go to a call. You have to be open-minded to understand that this is a long game. Nothing comes. There's no success based on all the short-term success is exactly that, short-term.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
You want to end up, making an impact, making a legacy, and how you make a legacy in your department, career volunteer, is to leave a mark.
Yes. Your name is important. You wear it on the back of your coat. The department name, it's on the back of your coat. Your personal name, it's on the back of the coat, right? You want to be able to walk away after your career, volunteer career. You want to walk away, whether it's in 10 years or 100 years, whatever amount of time you've done in the service, but you want to walk away leaving a lasting legacy. That you made a difference, that you were there for the right reasons. There are a lot of people that come and go, and we never talk about them again. It's because they never made an impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's 100%. So I mentioned my son is on the job. And he's a lieutenant now, which is good. And so at the time, he was a fireman where I was a captain in Toweletta 10. So they were going. So by the time he got on the job, I was a chief. So they assigned me to second alarm. And I go up, it was like one of these, he was never on my work group, but we always, either I was coming and I was going off duty, he was coming on duty or whatever. So when we caught fires together, unless one of us was working opposite, was shift change.
Yep.
Shift change.
Yep. I got you.
So 7 o'clock in the morning, and he's like me, get there early so I don't miss anything, kind of thing. So we out the door we go. He's going on smoke show, and I'm going on the second alarm from a different district. We get there. I report to command. The deputy's not there, and I said, "Hey, do you know that the building next door is also burning?" And he looks. He says, "How bad?" I said, "Well, bad enough. I came right around the back. We're gonna need lines."
Right.
And he's like, "Oh, okay." You couldn't see it from the front. So in his defense, and the thing, it was rocking, and he didn't get enough bullets yet to put into work. So I said, "Well, give me an engine in a truck." And he says, "All right, I give you a Tower 10. I went, all right. So I said earlier, I never go up where everybody else is going.
Right.
So Tower 10 is ordered to go in the rear of the building. So and maybe it's a 60-year-old guy that's done it before or not, but I open the front door and I walk in, walk right up to the third floor. And every floor I go to, there's fire in the rear of the building on the porches, and it's in the kitchens. Usually the kitchens are in the back of these 3-deckers. And not always, but most of the time they're in the back. So the porches get going. Usually it's a kitchen area that's burning.
Right.
So the first floor, it's not burning. The second floor, the kitchen, it's just going. The third floor is going pretty good in the attic space, So I sit down at the kitchen table, and the smoke is probably a foot off the ceiling. And I hear Toweletta 10 coming up there.
Yeah.
And I heard them force the door downstairs, and they come up there, and my son is the first one through the door to look at me sitting at the kitchen table with a smoke condition 3 feet above my head. And he's like, "Come on."
That's awesome. I love that. I can
looked
only
at my
imagine
watch,
what
I said,
that visual. Yeah.
Yeah, what took you so long?
Yeah. Where you been? That's awesome. That's cool.
And,
It's gotta be enjoyable for you that you laid a foundation from which your son wanted to follow, right? The fire service, the family business. And I know you alluded to it before in Boston, that is very popular to have 2, 3, 4 generations and cousins and, sister and brother-in-laws and brothers and sisters. Like it's a family game there for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just went to my friend's house in New Hampshire, and he's the 4th generation
That's cool.
Captain in Boston.
Yeah.
And his father was a captain with me on Huntington Avenue for 10 years. So, I mean, small world,
I'm sure. Do you, retire? How long you been retired now?
Since January. So 8 months, 10,
Has
10
it, I know you have training and traveling and speaking and so on, but hard transition?
I missed the job terribly.
Yeah.
But I love being retired.
Yeah.
Absolutely love being retired.
Okay.
I'm doing a lot. I'm spending time with family, of course.
Good.
And I have a new granddaughter,
Awesome.
6 weeks old. I have my oldest son I have one coming in February. So we just moved into a beautiful house. It was our dream house, if you will.
Great.
So I mean, it's
Life is
kind of
good.
all falling into place.
Yeah.
I missed the job, 100%. Missed the guys, missed going. I loved what I was doing, but it was time. It was, it
was time.
Yeah, another chapter.
I get it. Well, I'm glad, sometimes guys lose sight of that. And it's good to hear that you were focused on that. You hear a lot of guys talk about, like, I just knew it was time. And if that's the case, then good for you. And, you still got a lifetime ahead of you. And, you can now even make a broader impact, because you're outside of the confines of Boston now, and you're going to be teaching and educating across the country. And that's where you can really make an impression on the fire service. So good for you. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Thanks. I had a great career. We lost people, and, but that's the fire service, and then some were traumatic losses. Some are just losses because of just life, and that was happening. And, we get older, and, friends are getting sick and things like that. And I'm like, sure, I can do another 4.5 years in the fire service, in Boston. I'm still in the fire service.
Yeah.
But Boston, but, like you said, I have a long life, and hopefully, things are all falling into place with the grandkids. Yeah. So it's, it was time. And that's what I mean by I love in retirement. Things have fallen into place, and it's good. I do miss a job. We had a funeral the Monday, and saw a bunch of people that I hadn't seen before, but some of those people were retired. And it's like, hey, when do you retire? And it's like, I went in January. I was like, you kind of lose touch unless I don't see orders anymore, so I don't know where people are moving and when they're retiring, unless you run into people, and it's just like the old Irish wakes and funerals. That's when you see everybody.
That's right. I was just at a wake last night, and it was a family, an Irish family from Jersey City, New Jersey. And I was not surprised when we pulled up and there was, cops out front, and it's like, well, of course, 10 siblings in that family, hardcore Irish family. They got 10 brothers and sisters, at least 1 or 2 had to be cops. It's just how it works, Yeah. Yep. There's something to that, man. I mean, family matters, and good for you for recognizing that and enjoying your next steps. And you have 37 years to lean back on with Boston, and time before that you can now share with the fire service nationally. I think it's fantastic, Chief. I really do.
Yeah, well, thanks.
Good. I want to.
Yeah, hopefully I can do this for a while.
You will. You got a lot of time ahead, brother. I promise you that. And you got a great message to share. You and I, we've crossed paths a couple times, and then we just saw each other a couple weeks ago doing a lecture series up in Massachusetts. And that was great. I did the morning, you had the afternoon, and so on. So I'm looking forward to crossing paths with you again. And
that we will.
Yeah, brother, keep pushing, keep spreading your love for the job. It's infectious, and we need that, and we need guys with experience that you bring to the table. We need that experience to be shared. So please share. So, Chief, thanks for joining me today on the show. Goes quick, man. That hour runs by real fast. But
it does.
We'll connect again, and I'd love to have you back on. We'll tackle some other topics or something. It'll be a lot of fun. So, good.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for joining me. Where can people find you if they want to reach out? They want to learn more about you, or maybe talk to you about PL Vulcan or yourself coming to teach or lecture. Where can they reach out to you? An email or a website?
Well, we have PL Vulcan Training. Concepts.com. You can catch me through that. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Captain Pat 10, CAPNPAT 10. And at Verizon.net, if you want to email me, that's that.
Perfect.
But, Captain Pat 10. Feel free to call me, reach out, text, whatever. I'll get back to you.
Good.
We can certainly do that. Verizon is my carrier, so it's CaptainPat10 at Verizon.net.
Perfect. Good.
And PL Vulcan, or you can find me on Facebook, Pat Nichols.
Awesome.
I'm around.
Good. Well, we will find you, and there's a lot there. I know that your class was well received. And I know that you do a lot of hands-on teaching through the Massachusetts State Fire Academy and also through PL Vulcan and for yourself and so on. So plenty to offer. Thank you, brother, for spending an hour with me this morning. I truly appreciate having coffee with you this morning. It's been it's been a good conversation. I definitely am going to invite myself over one day to solve some of the world's problems there behind you at that bar. I'd love to see that firsthand and get the rundown on the history hanging on the walls in your basement. But there's a lot there.
As my wife would say, every picture's got a story to it.
Of course. And I'd love to hear them. So we'll have to do it again soon, Chief. Don't go anywhere. I'm just going to sign off the podcast. I'll come right back to you, okay? Hang on one second.
Okay.
Good.
Right.
Everyone, thanks for tuning in for another episode of the National Fire Radio podcast. Do me a favor. Take this story today. A district chief, Pat Nichols, out of the city of Boston, Massachusetts. Plenty of history and knowledge there in 37 years of responding to fires in the city of Boston. So do me a favor. Take this conversation, take it back to the firehouse, and talk about it, because when we talk about the job, we're making the job better. We'll see you at the next one. Thanks for tuning in. Jeremy, National Fire Radio.